So the first card in this video is actually kind of the first Pokemon TCG card ever released. So Pokemon came out in October 20th, 1996 in Japan, but 5 days before that, in Koro comic, this Pikachu was released alongside Jigglypuff. And this Pikachu is pretty unique. These cards are printed on glossy Japanese cardstock, and on the Pikachu, the illustrator is miscredited as Ken Sugimori. These cards were later reprinted and included in copies of How to Understand and Play Pokemon, and yes, the correct illustrator Keiji Kinobuchi was credited on this copy. And then after this, the Pikachu was reprinted yet again, but this time with new artwork, and this time it actually was by Ken Sugimori. And this card was handed out as a promo at some Toyota events in 1997, along with Arcanine. And then this Pikachu was included once again with the Bulbasaur intro pack, which was an introductory deck that came with a cassette that was made to teach little kids how to play Pokemon. And then a year later, it was available again through Koro magazine. This time it was a mail-in campaign, and it's said that only 2,000 of these cards were ever made. And this brings us to spring 1999. In an issue of Hyper Koro, 2 cards were included, the Pikachu and the Jigglypuff, but this time they're in English, and if you look closely, the Black Star promos are not Black Star promos, they're gray stars with yellow letters. So these are kind of the first Black Star promos, but they're unnumbered, so they're kind of like a prototype. Finally, in July 1999, we got our very first Black Star promo. Black Star promo number 1, which is Pikachu, and this was a Pokemon League promo. So if you don't know what a Pokemon League is, it was just an event you could go to or attend with other people, and you could play the Pokemon TCG together. Sometimes they just hung out and played the game, other times there were meetings or tournaments, and quite often promos were given out for free or as prizes. I never actually got to attend a Pokemon League when I was a kid, but I did get teased at the end of the Pokemon movie. Before we move on, we're not actually done with this Pikachu yet. There's still some pretty cool lore behind it. You see, this Pikachu was actually the very first secret rare Pokemon card, like ever. Some of these Eevee Pikachu cards can be found with the Black Star promo symbol and also the first edition symbol, which is seen nowhere else. For a long time we thought this was an error, but eventually some old Japanese documents surfaced suggesting that it might have actually been intentional. Okay, so we've covered the very first Black Star promo, and in doing so we kind of covered the origins of Black Star promos. That's going to be the longest one, I promise. Let's move on to number 2. And 3 and 4 and 5. So these cards were available at the movie cinema when you went to see Pokemon the first movie in 1999. With the purchase of a ticket, you would get one of these cards. Now, I've already done a video on these, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but long story short, they have this gold Kids WB stamp on them in the top right. Some of these, just a few of these, have the stamp inverted, and this resulted in those cards being extremely expensive. And then there's some more that actually don't have the stamp at all, and those are pretty pricey too. But the one you have, or the one you had when you were a kid, probably just had the stamp in the upper right. And each of these cards were Japanese promos before they were ever printed in English, like I think most cards on this list. And they were distributed by means of special events, magazine inserts, and included with Pokemon products. Number 6 is Arcanine, and this was a Pokemon League promo for us, but in Japan, we actually already went over the origin of this card. It was handed out at those Toyota events in 1997 with the Eevee Pikachu. But then the Japanese version of this Arcanine was reprinted and included with the Pokemon Song Best Collection CD. And yeah, we're going to be talking about this CD a lot in the video. A lot of these cards got multiple releases, just like this Jigglypuff. We've covered the origins of this card already, but it is in fact Black Star promo number 7. Yeah, so if you saw the movie and if you had a more refined taste, then you were obligated to also purchase the CD soundtrack, or cassette by the way, and you could take the proof of purchase and mail it in and they would send you back this Jigglypuff card. Now this was later released in the UK, and in the UK you didn't have to mail anything in, the Jigglypuff was included in the CD. I get why they did Jigglypuff for like the music CD, but I always expected it to be. So Black Star promo 8 and 9 is Mew, the same Mew, except 8 is a non-holo and 9 is a holo. And this card actually comes from the Japanese expansion Mystery of the Fossils. So this is the first time that we got a Black Star promo made out of a card from an actual Japanese expansion. And so if you're a big Mew fan, you probably already have these 3 cards, but did you know there's actually a 4th version of this? In May 2000, another copy was included in the May issue of Gata Comic. This is an English copy but printed on glossy Japanese cardstock. This Meowth Black Star promo number 10 was included in the Pokemon trading card game Game Boy game. It has a small GB in the lower right of the illustration window to indicate that it is from the Game Boy game. In Japan, this card was actually created as a digital card for the Game Boy game. It was later made real and printed on Japanese glossy cardstock and found in Korokoro Comic in 1999. But this Japanese version didn't have a set symbol, so the GB is outside of the illustration window instead of being in the lower right. And this is also a non-holo foil card, so you can clearly see the background. I like this because this can sometimes be the hidden beauty of a card. Like, this card has a beautiful background consisting of the 3 evolution elements, but let's not jump ahead too far. This card was initially released in Japan with different artwork, but it was then later brought over and printed in English with a new illustration. This was available as a Pokemon League promo, but like I said, it has a very cool background. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to see that background behind the holofoil. But fortunately, there is a non-holofoil version of this card made as well, and even though it's in English, it was released in Japan as a promo. So I think it's pretty cool that you can collect this card in holofoil and non-holofoil. I think it really does the artwork justice. The Japanese version of this card was originally available at a hobby fair in Japan in 97 and 98. In 99, it was reprinted and included in the Pokemon Song Best Collection CD. There it is again. And then in April 2000, it was finally printed in English, but with a new illustration by Christopher Rush. Yeah, that Christopher Rush. And this was available in the Nintendo Power magazine. Now, it's normal for a card to get a new illustration, but in this case, it was likely due to it being, well, pretty much the same as the Black Star promo number 3. And then after this, the card was printed and distributed again as a Japanese promo, even though it was in English, kind of just like that Eevee we talked about. And then finally, this card was included in the Legendary Collection, where it got a regular and a reverse foil. So similar to the Meowth from earlier, this Venusaur was created in Japan as a digital card, but it was later made into the real thing and included with the Pokemon card Game Boy official handbook. And we don't see this often, but the foil pattern is split up in the background of the illustration. So the sky shows the holofoil pattern, and then Venusaur, as well as the ground he's standing on, are non-holofoil. It's pretty interesting. But it eventually came over to English as Black Star promo number 13 with a few changes. Now the entire background of the illustration was holofoil and the GB logo was removed completely. Now, this shares artwork with the Trade Please or CD promo Venusaur, although it is a different card. And that artwork can also be seen on the original English booster packs by Ken Sugimori, of course. This card was originally released as a promo found in the June 1997 issue of Koro Koro Comic, and was released in English 2 years later. Now, this card you probably had yourself as a kid. This came included with the Pokemon The First Movie VHS, which released on March 21st, 2000. And here you may have already noticed that this is identical to Black Star promo number 3. The artwork has changed from a Ken Sugimori illustration to a Benimaru Ito illustration. Ito only did a handful of cards back in the day, but I especially love his illustrations on the Bandai Card-S cards. Cool. Porygon. Cool Porygon? Cool. In Japan, this cool Porygon was handed out for free as a promotion with Hungry Snorlax when you bought a Nintendo 64. And then both the cool Porygon and the Hungry Snorlax were reprinted and included in the Pokemon Song Best Collection CD. The cool Porygon was later printed in English and included with Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64 here in North America, and earned itself the cool position of Black Star promo number 15. Computer Error was given out as a promo at the Pokemon League in May 2000, and this is the first trainer card to be a Black Star promo. In Japan, it was originally printed and found in the January 1998 issue of Koro Koro Comic, but later reprinted as a promotional card for the Kamex Mega Battle regional tournaments. After this, it was printed again and included in the, you guessed it, Pokemon Song Best Collection CD, obviously. But all these versions of Computer Error are not identical. If you look at the lower left, there is a Team Rocket symbol. This card is based on a Team Rocket scheme anyways. You can see the R here, but notice that it has a red drop shadow below it. This only applies to the Koro Koro and CD promo prints. The Kamex Mega Battle version has a white drop shadow, and it's printed on Japanese glossy cardstock. The English version was released in May 2000 as a Pokemon League promo. In Japanese, this card was printed with 2 different illustrations around the same time. One was actually a promo that was handed out for free with the 3rd volume of the Pokemon Card Fan Club, and then the other was included in the Rocket Gang expansion. It first came to English in the Team Rocket expansion, which was the Rocket Gang counterpart, and it had the same illustration. And later that year, it was printed in English again, but as the Black Star promo number 17. It was included in the August 2000 issue of Nintendo Power Magazine, and this card is known for its error as it's missing the entire 60 HP in the top right. And then this card was printed yet again for the Legendary Collection and had the same illustration as the Team Rocket artwork. I always thought it was weird that they printed like 6 different variants of this card, but none of... This card was first printed as a promo in Japanese and came with the Meowth's Party CD. After this, it was printed in English as Black Star promo number 18. The Pikachu production symbol was replaced with a Black Star promo star. But the English version was actually released in the UK first, and was available at the Pokemon exhibition at the Millennium Dome. But a month later, here in North America, it was simply a Pokemon League promo. But a year later, the Japanese version was reprinted for the Pokemon web series. This means that the card got a new look since it was now part of the E series of cards, and it got a Pokemon web symbol in the lower left. The first printing of Sabrina's Abra was in the Yamabuki City Gym theme deck in Japan. This version of Sabrina's Abra has an Atsuko Nishida illustration and was printed as a promo in both Japanese and English. The Japanese version was found in the March 1999 issue of Koro Koro Comic, along with Blaine's Growlithe. The English version is Black Star promo number 19 and was available in Nintendo Power Magazine in October 2000. You'll remember this Psyduck from the Fossil expansion. It was printed in both the Japanese and the English versions of Fossil, but then a new version with new artwork was made into a promo, and it was by the same illustrator. So the Japanese promo was included with the second volume of the manga How I Became a Pokemon card. You'll notice this little symbol looks like a card inside of a manga, which is pretty cool. Down at the bottom of the card, it says Pokemon Card Books, How I Became a Pokemon Card Bonus Card, but in Japanese, of course. And for the English version of this promo, it is Black Star promo number 19, and to get it, you would have had to attend a Pokemon League event in September 2000. These cards were first printed in Japanese and were handed out in Nippon Airlines in 1999. Passengers could receive a 2-card pack with Zapdos and Moltres, or a 2-card pack with Articuno and Flying Pikachu. Are you picking up a theme here? This unique artwork is by Toshinao Aoki, and all 3 cards connect to form a single image. Now, the English print of these cards had new artwork, this time by Naoya Kimura, but Toshinao Aoki was accidentally credited on all 3. The error was corrected, but not very quickly, which means the Naoya Kimura cards are much more rare. All 3 of these Naoya Kimura cards were then re-released in the Pokemon web set, which gave them a new look. And then finally, in the Supreme Victors expansion in 2009, these cards were printed again, but with the original Toshinao Aoki artwork, so these 3 cards actually have 5 variants each. Collecting them all would be legendary. So the very first print of this card was released as a promo in Japan with the all card calendar, which I sometimes saw referred to as the 2nd anniversary calendar. But the English version was released only in Sydney, Australia as part of the Pikachu World Collection. But the following year, in 2001, it was available in North America through a Pokemon League campaign that had players mail in an illustration in exchange for the Birthday Pikachu card. And then there was another reprint in Japanese this time, and this was included with the 6th volume of the manga How I Became a Pokemon card. But if you look at this Birthday Pikachu, it's lacking that little set symbol that like the Psyduck had earlier, which is a shame. But it's got new artwork by the same artist, and it's honestly so good. And then we got 2 more reprints of this card. You probably know these ones from Celebrations in 2021. There's the Japanese version and the English version. Here is one of the more recognizable Black Star promos, Flying Pikachu. So the original print of this card can be found in the November 1997 issue of CoroCoro Comic. A year later, CoroCoro held a mail-in prize campaign where you could once again get a Flying Pikachu. And around the same time Nippon Airlines handed out their own copy of Flying Pikachu, you can see that the illustration has been changed slightly to add an airplane. This card was received in a 2-pack with a very familiar Dragonite. And the following year, the airlines handed out a new copy with updated artwork alongside Articuno. And the next Flying Pikachu to be printed was actually in German, and it came with, the Pikachu World Collection from Sydney, Australia 2000. And it wasn't until August 2001 when we would finally get our own English version of the Flying Pikachu. But we also have the Rising Rival and Evolutions reprints, which each have a English and Japanese version. This Pikachu, often referred to as Snap Pikachu, was originally released in Japanese in Pokemon Trainer magazine in the May 1999 issue. And you'll notice, obviously, that this card doesn't have an original illustration. It actually has a snapshot from Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo 64. A Spanish version of this card was included in the Pikachu World Collection from Sydney, Australia in 2000. But then we did get our very own English copy in 2001, and it was a Pokemon League promo. That's it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2.